The Iranian hostage crisis lasted for 444 days. However, the hostage crisis was just a small part of the Iranian Revolution that took place over several decades. While the gates of the embassy were first broken in on November 4th of 1979, the conflict began in 1953. That year, the CIA began to make moves to assert the Shah Reza Pahlavi as the leader of Iran. They began to aid Iranian militia in combating revolutionaries and to ultimately depose the sitting leader, Mohammad Mossadegh. Eventually, the Shah is successfully seated at the throne, much to the dismay of the Iranian citizens. In 1963, however, the Shah decides that his own country has become too volatile for him to live there. He flees to Iraq and begins to seek out a U.S. visa to allow him to escape the Middle East altogether. Originally, the Shah's exile was voluntary, a measure he took to ensure his own safety. However, a jury eventually decided that he should be officially exiled by the state. In the midst of cries by Iranian protesters to hand over the terminally ill Shah, the gate of the United States Embassy in Tehran is broken into. Protesters rush through the open gate, attempting to break through the doors to where the workers of the embassy hide inside. 52 hostages were held for over a year by protesters. However, some were able to escape to the Canadian ambassador's residence, where they could hide out in safety. In the summer of 1980, the Shah dies of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. The cries for his return to Iran, where he would face trial and almost certain execution, are now baseless as he is already dead. The captors of the U.S. hostages insist that this will have no effect on the status of the hostages because they want to see compromise from the United States. In keeping with their principles of never negotiating with terrorists, the U.S. refuses. Early in the next year, the U.S. is willing to reach some compromise as the hostages have now been interned for well over a year. They have been interned for almost 450 days. Ultimately, both sides come to an agreement with which they are both amenable. The hostages are returned to the United States, where there has been much rioting and aggressive protest against Iranian immigrants, but conversely, an outpouring of gratitude towards Canadians.